basically, my story. I was basically raised in a Christian household. Like, my parents went here my parents followed this church for ever since I could remember. Like, I remember when they still had rooms in the sides and the tiny little main hall. I remember when they rebuilt that so that included the rooms. I remember like all the rebuilding of this church. And even though I went there, like I went to this church, I still like didn't get it. Like I'd be like, passing out during a sermon or something like that. And before like making the choice to go with God, um, it's just I wasn't with God. Like I didn't have a will to do anything. Like I'd see people serving God, and I'd be like, I mean, like sure they got to be with people, but like they're spending a lot of their time. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's just enjoyable to like be like, hey, I'm doing this for God. That's pretty cool. Like I'm not going around telling people that I'm doing it, but like before I just didn't understand the service, like why people did it. And also I was kind of not a bully, but a mean person. Um, I enjoyed getting before I enjoyed uh, more of pain, not pain from other people as per se, but like just I don't even know how to describe it. Um, when something wasn't my way, basically with another person, and I could get it, then I would. Like even if it would require me being doing something that wasn't necessarily good. Um, and then I started, actually, it's honestly one of the big things that got me to listen were like Sunday school sermons. Not from mine, but like when I was actually older, once I started like just visiting random Sunday schools, is they just had, it was just like looking at the teachers and them just telling these kids a story and being like, thinking on that story and basically the teacher's telling the story and then I think about it and I'm like, wait a minute, let me read that story again. And I read the story and there's just so much context in the story. And I'm just like, how can they be they're just telling this basic story to these little kids and I'm reading it and I'm seeing a ton of like just new stuff that's just opening up for me and I'm just like, how can so much come from some like just a story? And then my sister like I knew the Bible quite fairly well before, without like really not caring. Like I still like knew what sin was. I still didn't really want to do a bad sin. Like I didn't want to like kill a person, obviously, but I didn't feel like fear. Um, at first, like not I didn't feel fear. It was kind of like I might not go to heaven, but then I kind of forgot about it and then kept living my day. I knew about the Bible, and then I would start arguing, not arguing with sister, we would just start having theological conversations about the Bible. And those honestly really helped me a lot. Like, she would just talk about all these different things. Like, I knew these stories. I knew like some background behind them, but my sister would just go in deeper and just like in the New Testament, just a bunch of like just rip them apart. Like she read Romans. I think it took her like a month or something. It took a long time, and she was reading it for hours daily. And just for her to pick apart every little piece of Romans took her that much time. Like I look at her Bible and it's like four different underlines like for just one word, like all just like annotating and just like pages of notes kind of thing. And then we would talk about it and she would be so happy. And that honestly made me want to go into the Bible and read also and be like, I wonder if I can do that myself. So like I would be reading and all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, that's really cool. Like I wish I would write that down. But like that's when I started to like be more intrigued in God and the Bible. So I'd like be reading say John or something, and I would read something and then I'd be like, wait, Jesus talked about this like 5 chapters back, and this is kind of like tying in the same thing, and like this small little story just huge, like all of his parables, like they just have so much meaning, and everything he says, everything he does actually had meaning. And the amazing thing is when my sister started like showing me different preachers and stuff like that, or yeah, my they would just show that the Bible has a lot of background stuff and just like all this like history behind it that like can prove all this stuff to be true. And like when what Jesus is talking about, they like go back and find like scriptures talking about that special thing. And then knowing that all the stuff that he says, like not just the stuff that I've watched a video on, but all the stuff that Jesus had done and talked about, was actually probably had like that kind of basis, like that much history behind it, like just like Jewish traditions that he would always like uphold that may have been like gotten rid of a long time ago, like something that he would like help keep doing, like I can't remember off the top of my head, but there were just so many like background things that if you didn't know about, you'd just be like, oh, it's a story. But when you know about like the little tiny pieces that uphold it, like all the Jewish traditions and all that stuff, then it just like filled it in so much more. And that made me so much more intrigued in the Bible because I'm like, hey, it's not just stories. So then I started reading and I started to like just think about it, and I started to understand, and I started to fall in love with it.